Alright, so Mike Israetel's friend Milo Wolf just posted a 38-minute defense of Mike's PhD thesis. And I'm not gonna lie, I haven't laughed this hard in weeks. This man really said, "Let me help my friend," and then proceeded to make everything worse. Nothing says my PhD is totally fine like your buddy needing to spend 40 minutes explaining why it's actually okay that it's bad. So we're gonna watch the best parts of this disaster together, and I'm gonna point out exactly where Milo fumbles the bag. And yes, this is my third video about a PhD from 2013. Why? Because you keep watching them. We're all part of the problem. Let's get into it.
The version of Mike's dissertation I've reviewed is a much later draft. This is the document Mike himself saved, defended, and sent to me, and it corrects many of the typos and inconsistencies that Solomon highlighted in his video. Somewhere along the line, an older version ended up in the repository, through no one's fault in particular, and that appears to be the version Solomon accessed.
Okay, so Milo's opening move is Solomon reviewed the wrong version, checkmate. Except, how does this help? You're telling me Mike or the university uploaded an incorrect draft to the official repository and nobody noticed for 12 years? That's not a defense. That's evidence that nobody gave a shit about this thesis, including Mike himself. Also, Milo admits the correct version still has typos, formatting errors, and problems. So we went from catastrophically bad to just regular bad. And you're acting like this is a win? That's like if someone accused you of robbing a bank for $100,000 and you go, "Actually, I only stole $75,000, so this whole thing is overblown." My brother in Christ, you still committed the crime.
I would consider my PhD kind of mediocre at best. It is a passing PhD. It is well within what is normal for PhD programs. There is no actual controversy about it, but is it some kind of grandiose thing? No. Did I ever claim that it was grandiose? Absolutely not. I said I have a PhD, and I almost never talk about it because I'm not even so interested in talking about it. No.
This is my favorite clip in the entire video because Milo plays it like it helps Mike's case. See everyone? Mike admits his PhD is mediocre. He's being so humble and honest. Brother, if your defense strategy includes your client admitting his work is mediocre, you might want to reconsider your entire approach. You know what makes Mike admitting this even funnier? All those clips of him saying, "I'm smarter than almost every coach." Maybe every coach. My IQ is above 160. I have a PhD, so I know more than you. You spent a decade flexing this credential as proof of your superiority, and now that someone actually read it, suddenly it's, "Well, it was just mediocre and I never said it was good." You can't have it both ways, Mike. Either your PhD matters and proves you're an expert, or it's a mediocre participation trophy. Pick one.
After all, you can still usually find the sources. And the repeated methods? That's not carelessness, it's convention. In a multi-study dissertation, each chapter is designed to stand on its own, often in a format that could eventually be published as a paper. That means the methods are presented consistently across chapters, sometimes repeated almost verbatim. In fact, I was explicitly advised to do the same during my PhD, since examiners often read a dissertation in separate sittings. Repetition, in this context, supports clarity. It's a feature, not a flaw. Think of it like a recipe book. Each chapter might start with, "Preheat the oven to 180 degrees. It's repeated not because the author is lazy, but because the same instruction applies each time.
Okay, Milo, cool analogy. Now let me fix it for you. Imagine every recipe in the book said preheat oven to 180 degree, with the same spelling errors repeated throughout the entire book. At that point, it's not convention, it's incompetence. Nobody's mad that Mike repeated his methods. We repeat methods in multi-study papers all the time. What we're clowning on is that he copy-pasted the errors. The same typos, the same grammatical mistakes, the same awkward phrasing, 3 times without fixing any of them. If you're intentionally repeating a section for clarity, you proofread it once and then copy the corrected version. You don't copy-paste the broken version and call it convention. This is like defending someone who keeps making the same mistake by saying, "Well, they're very consistent." Yeah, consistently wrong.
But this is where context matters. Exercise science in the early 2010s wasn't where it is today. At the time, there was an active debate about whether increases in muscle size directly contribute to increases in strength and performance, or whether the two just happen to correlate. Researchers like Jeremy Lenicky were skeptical, pointing out studies where people got stronger without getting bigger, especially in beginners. Meanwhile, figures like Mike Stone, Israetel's supervisor, leaned on decades of coaching experience showing that bigger athletes consistently perform better. Mike's dissertation sat in the middle of that debate. By examining Division I athletes across multiple sports, his work added replication and evidence to one side of an unsettled question. Was it groundbreaking? No. Was it earth-shattering? No. But it was incremental science on a live controversy.
Oh, so Mike's revolutionary contribution to science was confirming that bigger muscles make you stronger? Groundbreaking. Someone call Stockholm and prepare the Nobel Prize. Milo frames this like Mike was settling this huge scientific debate, but then admits coaches and bodybuilders had known this since the 1950s. So you did academic research to prove what everyone already knew? Cool thesis, bro. And here's the thing. If this was such an important contribution to an active debate, why didn't Mike ever publish it? Where's the journal article? Where's the peer review? He admits he never published this externally. It sat in a university repository for 12 years because Mike himself didn't think it was worth pushing forward. If you discovered something genuinely valuable that settled a debate, you'd want the world to see it. The fact that Mike got his PhD and never bothered trying to publish tells you everything about how important this contribution actually was.
In the years after Mike finished his PhD, the so-called replication crisis exposed deep cracks across the sciences, at first in fields like psychology, but also in exercise science. And this remains an important issue to this day. A massive multi-lab effort published just a couple of months ago, which set out to replicate many landmark experimental studies in the field, found that only about 28% of exercise science studies replicated successfully, with the average effect size shrinking by about 75% compared to the original findings. One of the drivers of that crisis was a short-sighted incentive to publish only novel or flashy results, while replication studies were dismissed as boring or derivative. Seen through that lens, Mike's dissertation looks less like unoriginal busywork and more like exactly what science needs.
This might be Milo's best argument, so let me explain why it still doesn't work. Replication is important. Science does need people to verify the previous findings hold up. That's all true. But Mike didn't replicate anything. He didn't take a previous study and reproduce it. He didn't test whether prior findings held under new conditions. He just measured some Division I athletes and found that the big, strong ones performed better. That's not replication. That's just observation. Real replication would be researcher X found Y using Z methods. I'm using the same methods on different people to see if I get the same results. Mike's approach was, everyone assumes strong people are strong. I measured some people. Yep, they're strong. Cool. That's not addressing the replication crisis. That's just collecting data that confirms what everyone already thought. Nice try though, Milo. Points for creativity.
To date, Solomon has made more than 10 videos about Mike. That's over 13 hours of content, targeting a single person. Topics range from 2-hour collaborations critiquing Mike's bodybuilding performance, to hour-long reactions to his surgery, to videos like this one attacking his academic record. A quick look at his views on videos where he features Mike versus his non-Mike content shows an enormous discrepancy in his views. When one person becomes your channel's most reliable source of outrage, views, and income, it raises the question of motive. Then you look at his collaborators. In many of his takedowns, Solomon features or aligns with people like Greg Doucette, Johnny Shreve, and Lyle McDonald, all of whom have long-standing personal or professional grudges against Mike. Greg has built a reputation on endless reaction content, often at Mike's expense. Johnny has spoken for hours about his falling out with Mike, and Lyle has spent years attacking just about everyone in the industry, Mike included. Now, you can choose to believe that all of these people independently reach the same conclusion, or you could recognize the obvious. This is a circle of critics who amplify one another, and Solomon often amplifies the same critiques raised by others, to the point where it can feel to some viewers like he's acting as their spiteful voice.
Milo, my guy, you opened this video by saying Dr. Mike is a friend of mine. You're not exactly an unbiased observer here. And yeah, Solomon probably makes these videos partly because they get views. That's how YouTube works. Controversy performs well. But you know who else is making money from this drama? You. This defense video is probably going to do way better than your normal content because it's part of the Mike situation. And here's the thing, even if Solomon is motivated by views and money, that doesn't make him wrong. Ad hominem attacks don't address whether the criticism is valid. If the dissertation has errors, it has errors regardless of why someone pointed them out. Attacking the messenger doesn't change the message.
But here's the reality. In doctoral research, the single most important factor is not the university's overall rank. It's your supervisor and your research environment. Mike went to ETSU for one reason, Mike Stone. Stone was a giant in strength and conditioning research, with decades of experience bringing science to elite athletes.
All right, so Milo's argument is that university rankings don't matter. What matters is your supervisor, and Mike had the best supervisor in the entire field. Cool, great point. Now let me ask you something. If Mike had the best possible supervisor, this legendary researcher with decades of experience, why did the dissertation turn out mediocre? Mike Stone, this giant of sports science with hundreds of publications, looked at Mike's work with its copy-pasted errors and impossible statistics and said, yeah, this is fine. Give him the doctorate. So either Mike Stone isn't as good as you claim, or B, he completely dropped the ball as a supervisor, or C, standards in the field are just really low. None of these options help Mike. It's like saying my dad is Gordon Ramsay and he taught me to cook and then serving burnt food. That's more embarrassing, not less, because you had every advantage and still fucked up.
Perhaps the most common mechanical failure in the thesis is Mike's inability or refusal to press the spacebar. Missing spaces between words and after punctuation are so frequent, it's as if the spacebar was rationed. They're everywhere. By the time you encounter the 100th instance, you're no longer wondering how they slipped through. You're wondering if Mike's keyboard was partially submerged in cement.
Notice how Milo glosses over this one? Because there's no good defense for it. This happened hundreds of times, according to Solomon. You can't explain that away as, oh, everyone makes typos. At some point you have to ask, did anyone proofread this? Did anyone look at it even once before submitting? That's not a typo. That's negligence. That's the kind of error that Microsoft Word would flag automatically. Your computer would be screaming at you that something is wrong, and somehow it made it through to the final submission. That's not a typo. That's negligence.
I guess technically I submitted the wrong draft to the graduate school, and so that's been, being rectified now. But yeah, my PhD was as Jared Feather likes to say, 100% fine, which is a euphemism for it happened and it was okay.
I submitted the wrong draft. Brother, how do you submit the wrong draft of your doctoral dissertation? This is supposedly the culmination of years of work, the document that proves you're qualified to be called doctor, and you can't keep track of which version is final? That's like showing up to your wedding in the wrong tux, or bringing the wrong baby home from the hospital. This isn't some random homework assignment, it's your PhD. And then Mike describes it as 100% fine, which he admits is a euphemism for it happened and it was okay. That's not a defense. It was fine is what you say about food that wasn't great. The movie was fine. My day was fine. When you spent years of your life on something, fine should not be the bar. All right, so what have we learned from Milo's valiant defense of his friend? We learned that the wrong version excuse doesn't help when the right version also has problems. We learned that admitting your work is mediocre at best is not actually a good defense strategy. We learned that its convention doesn't excuse copy-pasting errors 3 times. We learned that addressing a live debate doesn't count when you're just confirming what everyone already knew. We learned that attacking your opponent's motives doesn't make your friend's dissertation better. And most importantly, we learned that when your defense requires 38 minutes of explaining why it's actually okay that the work is mediocre, you've already lost. Look, Mike's training advice is probably fine. Renaissance periodization helps people, the app works. None of this actually matters for whether his content is useful. But you can't spend a decade using your PhD as proof you're smarter than everyone, then when someone examines it, suddenly claim it was just mediocre appress work that doesn't mean much. Either it matters and proves your expertise, or it doesn't and you should stop flexing it. As for me, I've now made 3 videos about a PhD from 2013. Am I proud of this? No. Will I make a 4th one if someone else responds? Absolutely, because apparently this is what we do now. We're all part of the problem. Milo made a 38-minute defense, I made 3 reaction videos, you're watching this instead of training, we're all part of the problem. But hey, at least the algorithm is happy. And isn't that what really matters? No, stop watching YouTube drama and go do something productive with your life. Or don't, I'm not your dad. I'm Zerk, and I'll see you in the next one, which will probably be about some other drama because that's what performs well, and I've accepted who I am. Peace out.